for today's Think From Home. Really excited. Today we have a new speaker with us, Roberta O'Keith, and she's going to talk to us about some really cool stuff. First, we have to discuss what we're drinking because that's what we do on Think From Home. It's our opportunity to get sozzled on a Friday during the workday. So I think Roberta's got it nailed. We've got a cup of happy. What do you have? What did you bring in your cup of happy?
I brought fresh apple cider.
Nice. Did you make this fresh apple cider yourself?
No. There's a apple cider mill not too far from our house in Kansas.
Oh, nice.
And it's apple cider time of the season. So
it is apple cider time. It's also red wine time, which explains my glass of Chianti at, well, it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And in Europe, it's 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on where you are. So I'm justified. So cheers, everyone, and welcome to Think From Home.
There we go.
Yes, it's the best way to spend a Friday. So, yeah. Roberta, you are a CX strategist and coach. And what we wanted to talk about today, we spend a lot of time on the customer experience side talking about this stuff. If you can measure and measure and measure until you're blue, and it's nothing if you're not doing something about the problems in the organization. You uncover the issues and you throw your hands up, oh well, that doesn't help anybody. So we get this feedback, we do these measurements, we look at where we need to improve, and we need to go do things that are going to involve the very scary topic. And it's so scary that there's a skeleton in my background. He got so scared, he died. Change. So when we want to take action, it's going to require some form of personal change, organizational change, and this is really hard. So I wanted to spend our little bit of time today talking about organizational change, and I know you have some expertise in that. But before we dive into organizational change, I want you to tell us a bit about you and your company and what you do and so on and so forth.
Sure. Thanks, Holly. I really appreciate being on live with you guys and sharing and talking about this topic because I do get very passionate about it. My background has been working with major Fortune 500 companies most of my career. I spent about 13 years of that career with General Electric. And during that time at General Electric, I became a certified Lean Six Sigma black belt. And what came with that role was looking at how do you drive change within an organization, especially around processes. And when you're disrupting processes within somebody's job or function, you're going to disrupt their behavior and their way of thinking. And so change management was taught to me very early on in my career, and looking at different types of change. Why do people not want the change or resist change? But as it's evolved since then, I really look at change as more like transformation. And so I help companies identify those areas within their organization that they're trying to transform. So if they're looking to start at ground zero at their current state of how they service a customer or how they treat their employees, we want to sit there and help them map out what does that future look like, and then identify what do we need to do to get to that future state. And so a lot of that does come back to transformational change, behavior change, training and development of employees, and then looking at deep diving into business processes. Customer experience has been a passion of mine, and I've done consulting work in the past, helping companies develop their customer experience strategies and look at their voice of customer programs and look at how are they using that data, like you mentioned? How do they use that data? Are they just reporting it upwards as a metric, or are they really taking action with that data? And again, taking action with data is going to support any transformation you're trying to make within your organization.
Excellent. So why is it, I get people are involved and that's a challenge, but why is it that change is so scary in an organization? Why is it so hard?
Yeah, it is hard because if you look at, there's usually about 3 or 4 key things that you get when it comes to resisting change. Mm-hmm. First thing is fear of the unknown. Employees don't know what's going to happen in the future if this change were to happen. And so people are just naturally afraid of the unknown and what that result might look like. The other one I think about is fear of losing something that they have of value, that they find of value. So if an employee or a person is facing a transformation or a change, they're thinking that they're going to lose something, lose their credibility, lose their boundaries within what they do, or lose their job even. That's a huge one. Losing their job is a huge fear. And then I think change also really pushes people out of their comfort zone. You're asking them to do something different that maybe they've been doing for the last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And so pushing people out of their comfort zone, again, leads to that fear. And so it causes emotional turmoil within a person. Think about the last time you moved, if you moved from a house to another house or downgraded or upgraded to a house. That change was exciting, but also emotional. It may have caused a lot of fear, anxiety, frustration, and that's no different when you're trying to make a change in your organization. People still have those emotions. And so you need to really look at those emotions and figure out how can you as a business leader help them through that process of processing those emotions.
Interesting. It's funny because just today I was having a conversation with a coworker, and I was saying, if we did this particular process in this different way, it would benefit in all these other ways. And I got a resounding no. And I'm sitting there going, but I just showed you why this is a better way to do this. And why? It's mind blowing. And it's interesting that you say that, because I guess I really hadn't thought about, when you're asking somebody to make a change to a process, and in this case that this coworker had invented. This was this person's baby. Right. I guess that I hadn't really thought of there being an emotional side to that. And again, fear of the unknown. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong as far as the benefits. I mean, it seems like there are benefits, but I can see why, if it's not so apparent to them, and that emotional side to it. Yeah. And it's interesting because that just knowing that or thinking about that from my perspective, having been in that situation not 2 hours ago, kind of makes me think about how perhaps I could have dealt with the situation slightly better.
Right. So I've been through 2 or 3 different acquisitions. When a company comes in, purchases your job, your role, what you do, and they come in and tell you, you need to change these processes, and you need to conform to our culture, and you need to conform to the way we do it. Very little do companies ever come in and help those acquired employees understand why it's important, or we understand that you may have created this process, or you may have been here 20 years. How are you feeling about this? What can we do to help you overcome whatever emotion you're feeling through this process? Because emotions are more than just, I feel scared, I feel depressed. There's a deeper level that you can dig into with that employee and go, why do you feel so fearful? Let's dig into why. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. Okay, now we can deal with that particular emotion in a different way. And so, changing a process or changing an office location or whatever, I think a lot of people don't realize the human element of what that does to somebody.
All right, very interesting. So with that then, what is change management?
Right. So, the technical term of change management is having a system or an approach or a process to drive a particular change in the process, person, company, whatever that change is. Change management, there's multiple theories out there, multiple approaches. One of the ones I read very early on in my career was Kotter. Kotter developed a very systematic 8-step, I guess you would say it's a model or a framework that helps you understand the emotional side as well of what employees go through, the eight steps of that process or of that emotional scale. And it helps identify companies, where are you at in this scale of change? And so I've used that quite a bit in some of the consulting work I've done, just to educate companies, to let them know, hey, here's where you are on the scoreboard. Just like any kind of assessment or audit, this helps them understand where are they at in that time frame of change. And they could be early on or late adopters, So that can help them then address with their employees and share with them and communicate with them. Here's what it looks like. Here's the big picture. And here's where we're at in the journey, if you will.
And I guess that emotional journey is probably somewhat different for everybody. Because I'm thinking, I've changed jobs. I've been through, situations where I have a new boss. I've never, confirm it and merged recently with Dacracy. And this is my first merger. But at the same, so I've never been through that bit before. But I have been in situations where I've had to turn on a dime, and I do tend to be very quick to be okay with it. I don't know that I have the same level of emotional attachment to certain things, but I guess everybody's slightly different, where you'll have some people who are extremely invested, extremely emotionally attached, or maybe not dealing with it quite so well. So it's kind of on an employee by employee basis that you would have to really get that pulse check on how people are doing through any kind of organizational change, merger, acquisition, or just process change, or whatever the case is. It really does vary, I would assume, based on the person.
Right.
It's so interesting.
We're all different humans, right? Yeah. We all have different personalities. We all have different backgrounds that cause us to act a certain way or react to certain things a different way. And so at the end of the day, we're all humans trying to navigate through that change. And just like in customer experience, sometimes we forget who we're talking to, and we forget, what are they thinking? What are they feeling? What's important to them? And what are their needs? And implementing an organizational change is no different than approaching your customer experience in that way as well.
So is there some way to kind of, I would imagine if it is like person by person, and there's a lot of caveats, I get that, but is there a way to say, like, in a nutshell, how a CX professional can best manage organizational change most effectively?
Yeah, so for CX professionals, I would say we're definitely change agents. We are more than just implementing a tool to collect customer data, more than just having a team to develop a roadmap as to where to go with their customers' experience. You really need to think about and understand the personalities of the people on your team, of the people you're affecting within your organization. So for CX professionals, some key traits that you should have is A, be an open-minded person. Be always open to personal development so that you can become self-aware of maybe some of the things that are limiting you and how you treat others and how you bring others along in the journey. Sometimes we're counselors. Sometimes we're, therapists trying to help people navigate through that emotional part of the change. Maybe it's just sitting there and listening, having great listening skills and influencing skills. Listening and influencing are the most important, I would say, because you have to listen to everyone's side of the story or everyone's perspective of the process or the change, and then work with that team to influence them to come around to what is important and what is the best scenario for the situation. And using all of those, sorry, dogs just ran out of the house.
I don't know if I had to mute real quick because mine started barking. I think the mailman must have pulled up, and all of a sudden we get the bark. I'm like real quick to grab and mute to quieting down.
I didn't even hear it.
Part of the course.
I think at the end of the day, it's communication too. We have to be strong communicators as a CX professional. We have to be able to communicate on multiple levels: senior leaders, mid-level leaders, frontline call center reps. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big task. I'm kind of looking at this now, and like I said, it's interesting. Obviously, I didn't expect to run into, a process challenge this morning. So I'm looking at this through the view of somebody who's been through a challenge against an organizational change, like I said, just today, just a few hours ago. Yeah. And I'm realizing, how much human personality, emotion is involved. I'm realizing how, I think also, you're talking about the skills and so on. I'm realizing, how many limitations I personally have in that regard. Mm-hmm. I do tend to be very, my daughter actually just last night called me Spock, a Star Trek reference, that I go at things in a very logical way. And if everybody doesn't understand that my mind is blown, how can you not just get it? This is totally logical. Yeah. I don't understand. So and I think that's another key piece too, is that, you need to have a certain awareness of your own limitations. And you're calling that out right now with my limitations. I do tend to be this is the way it works best. And there's no choice around it. So things that, we need to look into developing as a CX professional, if you don't have those communication skills, figuring out how to develop them, figuring out how to develop those skills of influence and so on and so forth. And what's funny about that is that we recently did this year, a whole series around skills like influence and so on and so forth. Of course, I'm drawing a blank on what they were, but I think there were like 5 or so of them. Some of them were those more hard skills, like your analytics and so on and so forth. And the other side were those softer skills, your communication skills, your influence skills, etc. So I think I'm going to have to go back and watch some of those and learn a couple skills, because clearly I have some limitations. And I would encourage anybody else to look into that as well, any of the people watching now, because, again, I think it's so important to me right now because it's so fresh in my mind from things that were going on just today. And now as you're talking, I'm realizing I'm the one who screwed it up because I wasn't dealing with the human side of this. I was going in from a very matter-of-fact way.
Analytical.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is probably why they sit me a lot on the market research side of the business, because, clearly my emotional skills are weak and they need to put me over. Go deal with the analysis people. You're better there.
Yeah. Well, I think, an approach that you could take, and this is part of that Cotter's approach, is step 1 is really being able to communicate what is the vision? What are you trying to accomplish? And working with that person to understand, here's the vision of where we want to go, and then work with them to identify what's of value for them to accomplish that vision. Be like, oh yeah. So I want to go to California. Great. I want to go to California. Well, how am I going to get there? Okay. Well, I don't really want to drive. I don't want to go all the way, through this state and that state. I just want to get there. Well, having someone sit down and explain, well, here's how we have to get there. We have to drive through the Rockies. We have to, take it step by step. But the value is you're going to get to California within 2 days or whatever. I'm just making this up. But it's all about creating that vision, getting their buy-in to that vision first, and then working with them to develop the right process to get there. And you may have your own ideas and already have a new process outlined in your head, but rather than shoving it down somebody's throat or saying, here's the change, it's getting that buy-in. That change will be sustained longer and better and be, that person would that person would go along with it better than just being told what to do. Nobody likes to be told what to do. Yeah. They want to be told, here's what you could be doing, and go, oh yeah, I could be doing all of that. Well, here's the steps you need to take in order to be doing all of that stuff versus you need to do this. I don't know.
Yeah,
Does that
yeah.
make sense?
No, it makes complete sense, and it actually kind of goes to one thing I was kind of leading about to kind of talk about. Maybe there's more around this too. Is that, and I guess maybe this is from again somebody who's done it wrong in the past yourself, and I've seen it. You know, one of the challenges is that even and maybe I'm wrong. It seems to me that if you know, that's the influence that you're talking about is having that skill to kind of bring somebody around to understand. But
Yeah.
what about when you don't have the support of the bosses, the key stakeholders, the people who are in charge? Maybe is it the same there where you're trying to influence those as well? And what is the most effective way to get those people to come around? If you don't have, say, your title is manager, and you're trying to convince the CEO that this is an important thing to do. How do you do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that come to mind. The first one is make sure you surround yourself with cheerleaders and quarterbacks and cornerbacks who can have your back when you're going to speak to that leadership team. People that will help you influence the decisions or influence the vision that you have for the company.
Right.
You can't do it alone. There's just no way. You will fail. I will have to tell you that you will fail. If you are by yourself trying to march as an army of one, you need to have an army of people to support you. And if you're in a small company, maybe that's just having the, operations person or your CPA or, your frontline sales guy, whoever that is. Make sure you have people that are bought into the vision, who understand it, and who can help communicate that for you as well. Second thing around presenting to leaders and to CEOs and C-suite, make sure you know what's important for them. For example, if they are a leader that is very analytical and you know this, you want to make sure you bring the data. Be able to speak his language or her language as well. Or if you have a more charismatic leader who is more visionary, approach that person from that standpoint of here's my vision and here's where we want to go and here's how we get there. So you have to know your audience and really understand their personality types and their management styles, and that's how you cater and influence your plan. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're starting to get tighter on time, but I wondered if, we went through a lot in the last few minutes. It's only been just, we're coming up on 20 some minutes, and we talked about a lot, and it was a wonderfully interesting topic. But I'm wondering if, for CX pros in general, are there just a handful of best practices, or remember this when you're facing change to optimize the efficiency of implementing change or the effectiveness of that change? Are there just a handful of best practicey things that you would say, always keep this in your head?
I would say a couple things that, you got to develop a thick skin. Don't take things so personally. It's not you. It's maybe the approach, or maybe it's the change, and it's that person's reaction to that change. Mm-hmm. So keeping that in mind, try not to take things personally, develop that thick skin. And the second one is around looking at that person. Again, it goes back to the emotion. Know that that's a person at the end of the phone call or at the end of your meeting who is being faced with that challenge. And keeping that in mind will help you better communicate and help influence that person. I would definitely say you need to find a change management model or transformational model that can help you communicate what the stages of change are and use that as your barometer, if you will.
Again, didn't get to the mute button in time.
Yeah. So using a change management model helps you establish the same language within your organization. So you can start speaking the same language across all of your levels of your company. Just like when you bring in a quality tool like Lean Six Sigma, you train everybody in what Lean Six Sigma is, whether they're ever a black belt or master black belt or not. It's just so that they can speak the same language and understand, at least at a high level, what Lean Six Sigma means. So when you come in for a transformational change, you need to explain to them what is the language around change and what does that look like.
Wow, it's a lot to remember. But I think it's fantastic. I think that the tips you've provided today have been absolutely invaluable. And I'm sure that anybody watching this would agree. I've certainly learned a lot that hopefully I'll be able to apply right away. And I think that that anybody watching this would say the same. I can't thank you enough.
No problem.
And it was really great being with you today with your outsider and my, wait, let me get it on screen, my red wine. And of course, Herbert, my skeleton in the background, really enjoyed it as well. He told me that. We don't know how, but it happens. It's sort of like a telepathy thing that goes on between us. Yeah, I knew it. So it's Halloween. I've got to have a skeleton somewhere. He's actually been joining an increasing number of meetings lately. So I'm working from home. Nobody can stop me. So, we're still doing the at-home thing. But this was really great. I appreciate it. And I hope that maybe we can do another one in the future. I'm not certified or anything like that, but I've read some books on Lean Six Sigma and I find it fascinating. And maybe we can talk about that sometime in the future as well, because that's an awesome topic. Yeah. But for now, I will call it to a close for today's Thing from Home. And thank you again so much. We'll be back in 2 weeks where we're going to talk about the science of customer experience, which is a pretty cool topic because it turns out it's more scientific than I thought. Who knew? And we've got some expertise around the science that's in it. It's very interesting. So awesome. In the meantime, on social media, if you would be willing to share this, like this, subscribe, follow, all that stuff that everybody tells you to do in every video, I recommend it here too. But you know the drill, so I'll leave that to you. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their Friday.
Thank you.
Roberta, thank you so much.
You're welcome.